He is risen. It's one of the things we all agree on. It's kind of an amazing day. We all say it. We all say the same thing. Jesus overcame the powers of death and evil, and he overcame it with resurrection power. And I want to tell you what kind of power that is, because it is different from the powers of death and destruction and domination. It's not the power of domination, which uses force to impose its will over others. It's not the power of violence. It's not the power of exploitation, imposing our will on others with less power to get our way. It's creative power. Resurrection power is creative power. It's the power of new life and growth. It's the power of connecting and moving closer. It's the power of flourishing. And this happens at Easter with the resurrection. God's creative power overcomes destructive power. The power of life overcomes the power to destroy and the power of death. And something I think we need to pay attention to, something easy to miss, because sometimes we are confused about power, is that resurrection power is rooted in our willingness to be vulnerable. It's the opposite of the powers of death and destruction, which are rooted in the refusal or resistance to be vulnerable. The building up of walls that separate to keep others out. Attempts to dominate for safety and crushing fear. Destroying for control. Vulnerability is the way of the resurrection, and it's what Jesus demonstrates. Now, vulnerability is more than just the ability to share a cringy story to someone who doesn't want to listen. It's a lot more than that. It maybe is not even that sometimes. Vulnerability is the courage to do something good, even when there might be consequences that hurt. It's the capacity to be wounded in pursuit of God's good. And it opens up beauty and joy and love and connection like nothing else can. Now, to be fair, I don't know if it's realistic for us to automatically love the idea of vulnerability. Because I come up here every Easter and I think, I feel a bit vulnerable. You all know the story, I think. Maybe not. Sorry if I've overlooked you. It's kind of an assumption. But I need to tell the story in a different way, a creative way. There's a bit of pressure. And maybe what if I just don't show up today and they don't like it? What if it's like a real stinker? What if it's just a bad message? Today I was working on my message and I had about half an hour to go, and I don't know what I did, but I was trying to just finish things off, and I looked at my document and I saw 98 pages, 54,000 words. I've over-prepared today. Somehow I had hit the paste button over and over again, and I couldn't find my sermon anywhere where I had left it, and I was very distraught, and I feel somewhat vulnerable here today, putting something together out of those words. It's only 25,000 words. Vulnerability isn't always comfortable. Sometimes things happen and we just have to do it. Today we celebrate the big story of the resurrection, but there is a story within this story that we need to pay attention to. It's the story of Mary Magdalene. And we need to pay attention to it because this is how John tells the story of the resurrection. In the midst of all the big things happening, John zooms in on her. He focuses on her more than any other in this section. It's like he's saying, pay attention to this. Pay attention to Mary Magdalene. There's something for you in this. When we look at Mary Magdalene, we see vulnerability. And he points to this. And I think he's saying this is an invitation, a demonstration of how we relate to God through Jesus and how we relate to others through our vulnerability. It's Sunday morning, the first day of the week, and it's early. Very early. It's the time when the light is so faint that when you look, it's actually harder to see than when it's pitch black. It distorts shapes. And Mary Magdalene is already awake at this pre-dawn time. Her mind is racing. She's concerned. And maybe we can relate, those of us who wake up maybe when we shouldn't, wishing we hadn't, with our minds racing, concerned about different things. Concerned about losing your sermon. Concerned about your workday. There's other things that people are concerned about. So I get it. It's this shot of stress that she has, this cortisol. And I think her mind turns to Jesus. And she imagines him alone in that dark tomb. Dead, cold, defenseless, vulnerable. See, even the dead can be vulnerable in their own way. They can't defend themselves in any way. And Jesus is in this tomb, and he's deserving of respect. He died a terrible death. And Mary sees him as vulnerable. She fears probably further harm to his body or disrespect to his body, but also the political agendas of the Romans and the Jews to take his body for their means. She's worried. Jesus is vulnerable in that tomb. And the theft of this body could have happened in this powerless state. So maybe because of Jesus' vulnerability and despite her own, she sets out to the tomb in the dark, alone. Mary Magdalene is also vulnerable. She's a woman walking alone in the dark. She's a follower of the Rabbi Jesus, who was crucified by the Romans as the enemy of the state for challenging the status quo. She's vulnerable because her emotions are raw and right near the surface. She's taking a risk. And she doesn't know, will they come after Jesus' followers? Am I next? Are we all next? Will they search until they find all of us? Will they crucify us too? This is brave, and she's stepping out. It takes a lot of courage. So she sets out to the tomb alone. And it's in the time between times now. It's about 1 kilometer away, and it's hard to see. And the shapes kind of become other than what they really are. She arrives at the tomb, and the light distorts. And she sees what looks like the stone, and her fears are all realized. And she reaches this conclusion. The stone's been rolled away. They've taken Jesus' body. Those enemies, the powers of oppression, they've taken him. And she probably looked and saw the dark entrance to the tomb and didn't want to go there, but knew things were in the wrong place. She doesn't go in. But she reaches a logical conclusion. Someone has taken Jesus' body. Of course she reached that conclusion. Of course they would do that. He's vulnerable. They want to use him for political gain. Of course she reached that conclusion. So in that slow, dark time before dawn, She turns and runs in grief all the way back. Tears probably streaming down her face, panicking, deeply bothered by what's happened. So she tells the other disciples, "We don't know where they have taken him. He's gone." Peter and the other disciple, the nameless one, kind of a weird way to be remembered, the other one, hear this and they jump up and run. But the other one is a faster runner than Peter. He's known for that at least. I mean, he left Peter in the dust. Peter's not doing cardio, but the other one does cardio. He does the treadmill every day. He's like a 350 kilometer. I don't know. It's pretty fast, whatever he does. Peter's huffing and puffing and his sambas are flopping. And Mary actually also has to run back again. Didn't see that coming, did she? So she runs back, chasing these guys. So the men, they get there, and they look in, and they're curious, but they don't want to go in, but they persevere, and they look in, and they see that it's empty. And it says they saw and believed. They didn't quite get everything, but they saw and believed. But they just leave her. I don't know if they ran back again, but they just leave her by herself. And they disappear from this story's view. Mary stays. That's what it says. But Mary was standing outside the tomb, weeping. Maybe this weeping, this crying is one of the reasons people write her off, tell gossip about Mary Magdalene, stories. Mary Magdalene is this significant figure in the Bible, and unflattering volumes have been written about her and who she is. This bad drama. It's unfair. She's made out to be, in the words of others and historians and countless sermons, a prostitute, even though the Bible never mentions that anywhere. She's mentioned as a promiscuous woman, maybe even someone who's seducing Jesus, maybe even married Jesus. She's an emotional wreck. Look at her crying. Couldn't she be more like the men? Stiff upper lip, Come on. All of this has been debunked. But she continues to be perpetuated this way in sermon illustrations. Easter sermons, books and movies, not least of which is the popular but terribly written and filmed Da Vinci Code. This is who she actually was. She was among the first of the followers of Jesus. She traveled with them. She supported Jesus' ministry financially and in other ways. She was a witness to the crucifixion. She was a witness to the burial. And she's known in other traditions as an apostle to the apostles. Take that, gossipers. You'd be hard-pressed to find a better role model in the Bible than Mary Magdalene. So she sets out, encouraged to check on Jesus, aware of the risk. She's vulnerable and aware that she might actually be wounded emotionally or physically, but she is brave. I think John wants us to see Mary as an example to be followed, not an example to be dismissed. After the men disappear, we see the big part of the story meet the small part of the story. She encounters angels and they ask her, it's good, they ask her, they don't tell her not to cry, they ask her why she's crying. She tells them, they've taken my Lord, I don't know where he is. And right then she turns around and sees who she thought was the gardener. He asked her, why are you crying? Who is it that you are looking for? Thinking he was the gardener, she says, Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him. Then something happens. And listen, this happens to Mary first before anyone else. We need to hear this. Jesus said to her, Mary. So Mary was the first to hear the voice of Jesus. Mary was the first to see the resurrected Jesus. And she turned towards him and cried out, "Rabbi." So Mary's tears of mourning turn into cries of joy, because those emotions are so close to each other in times like this. I think her tears tell a story that we need to hear. The power of the resurrection is an invitation to relationship and new life that comes from vulnerability. It is entered by vulnerability, and it's displayed by vulnerability. All this crying is so uncomfortable. But weeping, I mean, if we had a movie, that'd be an ugly cry. The first person to see Jesus, known for all history, just ugly cries on screen. That's how she's known. But the first person to see Jesus was vulnerable. So I say crying, tears, weeping, runny nose. No thanks. Weeping plays an important part in Scripture, though. It's a vulnerable response to a deep feeling. The word to weep is used to capture this extreme grief when love is deep. It pours out from the inside, from the heart. And it's a pain that's expressed because the love is so deep. And that's why love is vulnerable, because things can happen to the ones that we love. In our culture, we often learn to suppress tears. A quick apology. I'm so sorry. I feel some tears. Please forgive me. We're uncomfortable with them. In sorrow, we feel shame or embarrassment when we cry. In joy, we turn our head away in embarrassment that we're displaying some emotion. I mean, if I get a little watery-eyed from time to time, I have a couple instincts and practices that I can do. I can make sure I move away from the emotion, grip my teeth a little bit, put a cap on it. I can also make sure I don't blink. You ever tried that? If you feel teary, just make sure you don't blink, because when you blink, it makes it worse. They drop, and that's like, people notice that. It's like, he's a little watery, but when you blink, oh, he's crying. Don't blink. Might make you cry. You can also just tell people you have allergies, or there's dust in the air, or there's an irritant. All those things are strategies. And we hear this, I'm sorry, I'm usually stronger than this. I'm sorry for being so weak. I'm usually stronger. I don't cry. It's like a resistance to being vulnerable and an attraction to pretending we are strong. But actually, it's more like a misunderstanding, because being vulnerable is strong. It's the opposite. So John zooms in on Mary and her tears. Oh no, I've got to wipe my nose. Vulnerable. So John zooms in on Mary and her tears, and Mary and her weeping, this deeply authentic and natural response that comes from her courage and vulnerability and displays her capacity and willingness to be wounded. These tears that Mary sheds are not weakness. They're strength. We shouldn't question why Mary was weeping. Maybe the question is, why weren't the others weeping? Where were their tears? Why don't we weep? Is not the grief of the crucifixion and the joy of the resurrection something to weep tears of sorrow and cries of joy? This is authentic. John wants us to see Mary as an example to follow, not as an example to dismiss. So, of course, this is the big story of the resurrection. There's a big story here, the Apostles' Creed. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to hell. The third day he rose again from the dead, and he ascended to heaven and is seated at the right hand of God. the Father Almighty. From there he will come and judge the living and the dead. Of course, that's the Easter story. But John invites us to see the small story within the big story of the resurrection. And it's the story of vulnerability. Because this victory, this way comes not from domination, it comes from vulnerability, from a power that creates new life. See, vulnerability is the courage to put yourself out there and take a risk, even though something might happen. It's the capacity to be wounded for good, to take risk for creation, for connection, and for love. And no one has ever had the capacity to be wounded like Jesus. No one ever has put themselves out there into harm and taken on burden to be wounded for good like Jesus. His capacity to be wounded, if that's vulnerability, is the greatest ever. Jesus was vulnerable. Jesus is vulnerable because he is putting himself out there, asking for our love. And John's focus on Mary and her vulnerability shows us that we too need to be like Jesus in this. For us to be God's people, we need to embrace vulnerability. Maybe we all need to just let go a little bit and be less concerned about being strong sometimes. Let the tears flow in joy and in sorrow. Sometimes, truthfully, often, I worry about how we are seeing and being seen as Christians or followers of Jesus, believers, whatever you want to call it, how we use power, because it seems to me we want to use power to put up walls and protect ourselves and assert our will and dominate. Christians, the church, whatever you call it, I think we are in trouble when we're focused and fixated on being strong so that we can win. And forget that the power of the resurrection is in Jesus' vulnerability. So we do this by putting on a facade that everything is actually fine, avoiding difficult and messy topics. Or maybe the fear of admitting doubt, publicly or privately. Wanting the world to conform to us. Along the way, I think we've bought into this idea that to be taken seriously means the image of strength, having all the arguments, winning, knowing all the answers. Vulnerability is different. It's the main ingredient in anything good we create. I don't know if you've had your turkey yet, if you even have turkey, or if you're a vegan, or you have a vegan turkey, whatever. But I know this, in good cooking, there's some key ingredients that you can't do without, no matter what you are cooking. Salt, right? You need salt. You need it to be hot. You need acid, and you need fat. You have a turkey without those things? A cold, lean, saltless, no acid turkey? I pray for you. Vulnerability is taking down the walls for going deeper, and it's the essential ingredient for a faith and life that's good. It's maybe asking someone to be a friend. It's maybe a confession when we are wrong, because that's hard to do. It's maybe helping someone when they might not want our help and we're rejected, or maybe even more difficult for some of us is allowing someone to help us. Those are all vulnerable things. Vulnerability is the crucial ingredient of the kingdom. It's the ingredient in every relationship with God and with each other that we need. And I think maybe we need more vulnerability in our relationship with God and others. Embracing vulnerability is the way of Jesus. Encountering Jesus in his vulnerability is the way of the resurrection. That's the power of the resurrection. So what happens when we're vulnerable? Jesus meets us. Mary was authentic and vulnerable, and what did Jesus do? He called her name. Why fake it? He knows. We got a habit of faking it, right? Fake it with each other, fake it with God. Fake it to make it. When we're authentic, he calls our name. When we're not authentic, it hurts our relationship with him and with others. So we need to embrace vulnerability for authentic faith. If there's one thing we could change in the church today, in our lives that would make a difference in the world, it would be to embrace vulnerability with God and with others. Imagine the difference. It would change the world. It would be releasing creative power instead of the power to dominate. Weeping is a posture of saved by grace through faith. It's that posture. And we weep in repentance and joy. We weep in hope. Both are expressions of our vulnerability before God and with God. Maybe we all need to weep a little bit more because he is risen.